1977, Act 2, Chapter 2, Arrival in Paris. The airplane descended slowly through the clouds. Below them, the city began to appear. Patches of gray rooftops, winding streets, and the thin ribbon of the Seine cutting through it, all like a quiet artery. Jimmy leaned slightly toward the window. Paris. For months it had only been an idea, a word spoken between the two of them in moments of dreaming. Now it was a reality unfolding beneath them. Beside him, Jelena watched silently. She didn't say anything at first. Her eyes simply followed the shapes of the city, growing larger as the plane dropped lower and lower. "You see it?" Jimmy asked. She nodded slowly. "It looks older than I imagined." That was the first thing anyone noticed about Paris. It looked like it had always been there. Not new, not modern in the way American cities seemed to be. Paris looked like a place that had grown slowly over centuries, each building leaning slightly into the next as if they had all agreed long ago to stay together. The wheels touched the runway with a soft jolt. A quiet cheer rose from somewhere behind them. In the cabin, a few passengers clapped lightly. Others stretched their arms after the long flight. Jimmy exhaled. "Well," he said, turning toward Jelena with a small smile, "we made it." She returned the smile, though there was something thoughtful in her eyes now. Neither of them knew it yet, but the city waiting outside would become one of the most important places in their lives at this very moment. Not because of the monumentous feat that they had achieved of 50 years, not because of the museums that were out there, but because of what would happen. The airport smelled faintly of coffee and cigarettes. Travelers moved in slow currents through the terminal. Conversations in French echoed off the high ceilings, mixed with the rolling wheels of luggage carts. Jelena paused for a moment just inside the main hall. "Listen," she said quietly. Jimmy stopped beside her. The language floated around them, quick, musical, familiar. "Now you understand. It's very different from 50 years ago, isn't it?" She shook her head, laughing. "Oh, Father of Time." Well, they joined the line for customs, and ahead of them a man argued animatedly with an officer while waving a passport in the air. Somewhere nearby, a child cried. A woman flipped through her travel guide while chewing gum. It felt chaotic and somehow exciting. Jelena clutched the strap of her bag and looked around again. "I can't believe we're actually here." Jimmy followed her gaze. Paris waited somewhere beyond the walls of that airport, and it had to wait no more longer for these two. The city had inspired painters, poets, musicians, and dreamers from centuries. Now it would receive these two once again. Outside, the air felt cooler than they expected. A row of taxis lined the curb, their drivers leaning against the cars or smoking quietly while watching the arriving passengers, studying them as if animals in a zoo. Jimmy lifted their suitcase into the trunk of a small black Peugeot. "Centre de Paris," the driver asked. Jimmy glanced at Jelena. She nodded eagerly. "Yes." The taxi pulled away from the curb and merged into the steady flow of traffic. At first, the view was ordinary. Roads, signs, buildings that looked much like any other city. But then slowly, the scenery began to change. The streets narrowed. Stone buildings replaced concrete ones. Balconies appeared on nearly every window, their iron railings twisted into elegant shapes. Jelena leaned forward silently, just into her seat. "Look at that," she said. A cafe passed by on the corner. People sat outside despite the cool air, small cups of espresso resting on tiny round tables. No one seemed to be in a hurry. The driver turned onto a wider boulevard, and suddenly there it was, the Seine. It gilded quietly through the heart of the city, reflecting the pale afternoon sky. Bridges across the river like carefully placed brushstrokes. Jelena's eyes widened. It's beautiful. Jimmy nodded. He had seen it for himself when he was a younger man, but now he was back, captured in the stillness of it all. Paris did not shout, it just simply existed. And here they were, existing amongst it. The taxi stopped in front of a modest hotel near the river. Jimmy paid the driver and lifted their suitcase from the trunk. For a moment, neither of them moved. They simply stood there on the sidewalk. The sounds of Paris surrounded them now. Footsteps on stone, distant traffic, the murmur of conversations drifting from nearby cafes, the clinking of glasses, forks on dishes. It was magical. Jelena turned slowly, taking everything in. So, she said finally. Jimmy looked at her. So. She smiled. What do we do first? Jimmy glanced down the street, then toward the river just visible between the buildings. He said, we leave our bags at check-in, just so that when we come back, they're already up in the room. We'll leave a note for the maitre d' to let our kids know that we're going for a walk. She nodded in agreement. Together, they stepped onto that narrow Parisian street, just like they had some odd 50 years ago, out looking for adventure. They were back, in Paris.